All right. All right. This is the Advanced Defensive Squad Lead training. Advanced Defensive Squad Lead training and Defense in Depth. Now, before we get started, this is not intended for newer players. If you are new to squad leading, please check out the Ultimate New Player Guide. I'll have a link in the description of the video. So yeah, please check that out if you're new to squad leading before you watch this video. All right, everybody on my screen, good to go.
Yes, sir.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yo, my name is Double O Douche. I was an original Kickstarter backer for Hell Let Loose. Have over 3,000 hours in game at this point. I've been an FPS gamer for well over 20 years. Was #1 in the world for Battlefield 4 in Engineer Score. Co-author of the Hell Let Loose New Player Guide, specifically the section on squad leading. Today, we're going to go over what it takes to be an effective defensive-minded squad. All right, defense is the heart of any team. If you can't defend, you'll never be able to go on the offense. You must be careful, though. A completely defensive mindset can be ultimately self-defeating. Here, we will discuss what is necessary to mount a successful defense. Note on that, this training is geared towards 50v50 competitive play. Although the topics discussed can be effective in casual games as well, I will proceed under the premise that you already have a good amount of experience as a squad lead. My goal is to hopefully help you improve your overall gameplay experience by sharing how I approach defensive-minded play and the tactics I use towards that end. So let's take a look at the tools and tactics of a successful defensive squad lead. We got communication. Of course, I reiterate this in all my trainings, and it probably will be a mainstay. Communication is massively important. We'll cover squad composition. We're going to cover passive and active defense, sector control, defense's depth theory and implementation. We'll have a quick discussion and Q&A, and I will also go over a little bit of the strategy to help better explain it and a little bit of Strat Sketch. So here we go. Like I said, we're going to start and reiterate communication. Importance cannot be understated. Brevity, clear comms, do not clutter command or squad chat with unnecessary chatter. Provide accurate intel. There is a huge difference between a tiger and a panther, and the units that you're calling out this information, you need to know the difference. Don't be afraid to call for help. If you're in the battlefield, you're in the middle of the thick of the fight, your defense squad, at some point, you're probably going to come up against more squads than you can really handle. You maybe can handle 1 or 2, if maybe 3 if you're really dug in a good position. If the enemy sends a full out assault armor and a whole like 4 or 5 infantry squads, then you're going to need some help. So just don't be afraid to ask for it. Say you just need some help on whatever side of the point you're going to need it on. Another thing when communication, especially with your squad, issue clear orders to your squad. If the mission fails because the soldiers did not understand the order, then the fault lies with the commander. That lies with the leader of that unit, the person who gave the order. Make sure those orders are clear. If somebody doesn't understand it and you sense a little bit of hesitation in their voice, it's all right. Do you understand what I want you to do? You ask them straight out and you lay it out for them. And if you explain it in the simplest terms possible without like trying to sound like a condescending prick. So basically, that's that excerpt that if mission fails because the soldiers didn't understand. That's an expert straight out of Sun Tzu's Art of War. If you've never read it, I have another thing a little later on. But if you've never read it, I'll provide a link in the description below. Great book, very easy read for anybody looking to help develop leadership skills in anything, not just video games, in life and everything. Art of War is a great book, and it's a free PDF link. So. Also, another thing on communication, listen to your squads. This is a big downfall of many a squad lead that I've seen. Really good players that have really good leadership ability and whatnot. You've got to listen to your squad. And I have an example of this actually later where T-Ra was in my squad during a competitive match against C-Nut, which I have a video example later. And during that match, T-Ra was hold up a point on MG, and we were asked to shift some of our defensive power to the right and see if we could help Muck hold up the right corner of one of the zones. And T-Rod told me straight up, he's like, I don't think I should leave this position. And if I stay here, the enemy's just going to march through. I've been cutting them down right here. And it's like, well, all right. My plans now changed because I'm not going to take T-Rod off a spot where he's really causing some damage and doing some good work. So you're going to have to adapt and overcome the situation. Just pay attention to your squad. They could have valuable intel just a squad's pushing your rear right now, and if you guys leave that area, they're going to overrun your defensive line. You're going to have to stay and take care of it. You're in the area. Just do it. So, all right, moving on. Squad composition. Dress for success. Every situation is different, and it's going to require different approaches, different tools, etc. But in general, this is what I would have set up kind of on my defensive squads. One, you're going to need a machine gun. Very few defensive squads I ever run into where you don't have a machine gun. It is such a huge base of fire for your squad. It allows you to cover the force multiplier is huge. It allows you to cover and suppress the enemy. You can suppress twice, 3 times your unit strength. If you're really good with the MG, you can provide cover for your unit so they can push out to where the enemy you're attacking from and push them out of the area. Also, you're going to need an AT. An AT gun in placement is a huge thing. It can be a massive force multiplier, just having that extra AT gun that the tank kind of doesn't see or whatnot coming into the point, and not always having to rely on the armor unit that you may have assigned with your group, and you kind of may be near that friendly armor unit. That extra AT gun can help take a lot of stress off of him as well, because if he comes into a under engagement from an enemy tank and you're able to get an extra couple shots on that enemy tank and maybe get him to bounce his turret when he goes to take a shot and throw his aim off, anything, it just can be a huge thing, and not just against tanks, infantry as well. And not to mention satchel charge. The applications for satchel charge are so many I'm not going to go into here, but they're hugely important even on defense. Sorry. Support. Players rotate as needed. When a support role is needed as a squad lead, do not ask for a volunteer. Nobody's just going to volunteer. Everybody's got blinders on. Everybody's shooting and stuff. They're doing their own thing and trying to fight and stay alive. Give the order specifically to the desired individual. You don't have time to wait when bullets are flying and stuff's going on. Ideally, someone who's not engaged in the combat at the moment, like in my defensive squad, I use T-Raw as my example of the last one. I'll use him again. In that situation, I need a support. I'm not going to tell T-Raw to get off the MG that he's suppressing and holding down an area to switch to support. So just be aware of what's going on with your squad. So, all right, moving on. The engineer, as a defense squad, it falls on you to support the armor units that are in your area. A lot of times, armor units will like to sit back and snipe enemy things and hold down a very wide area from a good distance back. Good tankers do this very effectively. They need infantry support, though. They're going to need the engineer can help get repair stations up for them, can help maybe build barriers to help protect their weak side, and help also just watch the tanks back while they're sitting there plugging away and keeping the defense with a lot of extra firepower in there. All right, yeah, and if shit hits the fan, don't have any engineer try to focus on building. Yes, fortifications are great if they're done right, but if too much effort is spent trying to get these up in the middle of combat, you're sacrificing somebody that could be better served advancing and engaging on the enemy rather than just trying to hide, stay alive, and hopefully build something that might save the tank from one shot or give you a little extra cover over this spot when you need to get these guys out of here before they run. All right, so moving on, medics, just know everyone else, have them use what they want to play best with. You want people playing in their comfort zone and having fun using the weapons they know, so they don't have any question in their mind, and they can just focus on killing and having a good time. Any questions? All right, moving on. Let's go. All right, we got active and passive defense. Don't get complacent. Passive means you will sit back, hold key angles, and wait for the enemy to come to you. You shift position slightly as needed to avoid enemy fire and maintain control of your small area. This would be like for the MG and maybe the one person assigned to just kind of watch his back, so they're sitting in the hard point or just kind of sitting stationary in whatever sector they're at, and they're just going to kind of let the enemy come to them. The other part of that is the active. You need a mobile element of the squad that constantly patrolling kind of on their own and guided by the squad lead. So like the squad is intelligent, they can look at a map and they see a red Gary. I've had, a lot of my squad people that I'm in command of, they'll be like, hey, I'm going to go check out this Gary. It's like, okay, awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Go check that out. Somebody else go ahead and back him up. So keep that in mind that you're going to be the ones directing them. Make sure that your units always have a purpose going on. Even if you put a move marker and you end up actually not making it to that move marker, still put the move marker up. Like a lot of squad leads I've seen, just they don't bother putting the move marker because something always changes. Don't do that. Always put the move marker up. You want your squad, as a leader, you want your squad always feeling like you are moving towards a purpose. Like all the time, you always want to set a goal for your squad to get to. It just allows them to feel like, even if quite literally you set a goal, a move marker of 150 meters, and you set a goal and you fight for the next 45 minutes through people that whole time to make it to that friggin' move marker, and you finally make it, you still feel like you accomplished something. The squad had a good time because you fought tooth and nail to even get to that move marker. It's just a kind of a thing of morale and giving the group direction. So, and balance. I put balance in here because you can't have a defense that relies on either of those two things at all. Sorry about that. Go back. You can't have a defense that relies solely on a passive defense or an active defense. If you have all your guys out patrolling, somebody could easily slip in, get to the hard point, kind of get out all your little side garrisons and spawns in there without any trouble. If you have everybody just sitting in the hard point, the enemy's just going to walk in, envelop you, and just eventually wear you down and wipe you out and take the point. So you got to have a good balance between these two ideas when you go in for as a defensive squad. So, okay, here we go. Sector control. Thank you to Muska for the fine memeage. We'll start with control. The control of a sector. You must control the terrain surrounding a hard point. So a presence in the hard point is definitely useful. Like, gives you good intel, like on the strength of the enemies in the sector, like a 3-2 chevrons, all that. But you can't just sit there. You have to control the areas and terrain surrounding these hard points, or you're never going to be able to defend effectively the hard point. Identifying choke points, lanes of approach, and bridges, and locking them down. Any kind of roads with hedgerows on them, you want to identify these main key lanes of approach and make those living hell for the enemy as they come down, be it with anti-tank mines, machine gunners, a tank pointed down that way. If the tank's pointed down cover in one way, have your machine gun setting up, watching an adjacent road or a different angle and whatnot. Just cover those main angles. At the very least, have you as a squad lead with your binoculars, keeping an eye out over there. And just keeping a lookout every once in a while. You got your MG covering this angle, you got the tank covering that one. Just keep an eye out for the ones that aren't being covered and where people could still sneak up. So, and the garrisons, I wasn't going to touch on spawns too much. Like garrisons and spawns, it's basically you make an outer ring, kind of a detection net, and use the outpost to fill in the little gaps in between the 200 meters. It'll help you just kind of identify where the enemy's coming from. The commander usually set those up. That's kind of why I didn't want to touch on it. But as a defensive squad lead, it may fall to you to have to replace some of these garrisons as they come under attack. And then you converge on the enemy, get them out of the sector, and then you'll have to replace your garrison and refortify that area. So moving on from there, if you want an idea of what I was talking about trying to identify choke points, like lanes of approach, stuff like that, and identifying terrain, check out, again, Sun Tzu's Art of War. They have a chapter called The 9 Advantages of Terrain, I believe it was. It goes through all the advantages of all different types of terrain and what you should do in a military type situation on those terrains. And yes, this is a video game, but the terrain still has a huge impact to play in everything. If you have a good fortified position on the high ground with great cover and good concealment, you can go on ridiculous kill streaks, and a lot of us in here have already done that. I've seen your guys' scores. You know the value of holding a good position and whatnot. The Art of War might help you just be able to discern a little bit better what those are and pick those out a little easier in game to help, get your squad hooked up, get your machine gun into that really good position. You see him set up in a spot, it's like, hey, dude, come on over here. You might get picked there. Set up in this spot. Get them over there and get them hooked up, and it'll allow you to just be a little bit smarter of a squad. All right, so now we're going to get in defense in depth. I wanted to touch on this, and really this is just a quick touch on this because we could spend hours going over the ins and outs of defense in depth. So I'm literally going to give you the Wikipedia definition and go through my kind of just notes on that in a second. So basically, defense in depth, also known as deep defense, elastic defense, is a military strategy that seeks to delay rather than to prevent the advance of an attacker, buying time and causing additional casualties by yielding space. Rather than defeating an attacker with a single line, strong defensive line, defense in depth relies on the tendency of an attack to lose momentum over time as it covers a larger area. Momentum over time, or as it covers a larger area, sorry. A defender can thus yield lightly defended territory in an effort to stress an attacker's logistics or spread out numerically superior attacking force. Once an attacker has lost momentum or force is spread out to pacify a large area, defensive counterattacks can be mounted in the attacker's weak points, with the goal being to cause attrition and drive the attacker back to its original starting position. All right. So in traditional defenses, to make sense of this, traditional defenses will concentrate all of its resources into like a solid front line. You'll make the nice boom like we try to set up in those matches, a solid front line that wraps like clear around and covers all the sectors at that point, and we try to hold them there like a wall. Well, it's great to be able to lock down an area like that and just hold that line. It doesn't always work, and it also can leave you very, very vulnerable. A smart enemy will probe your defenses, identify weaknesses. When found, will more than likely launch a concentrated attack designed to exploit those weaknesses. Having a layered defense will allow you to contain enemy units that have pushed their way past your lines. Instead of fighting to try to take that area right back from them right away, let them come in. Once in that area, you can now contain them there and break their momentum. You can stall them out right in that spot. Like you get into a spot where they got good cover behind a building, nice little trench system, and you just sit back, and once they're in that area and they push you out of there, you're just sending lead in there and you're picking them off and keeping them boxed in and to the point where they're kind of afraid to come out. And I have a good example of this in the C-Nut versus Esprit de Corps Goth game, which I will show you in a little bit, which kind of illustrates the defense in depth tactic, which it really worked out well and it really punished the attackers, and just eventually we allowed to push them back right back into their territory, like the definition of defense in depth. So defense in depth is designed to punish the enemy for every square foot of your territory that they occupy. It's a great strategy. I love it. One of my favorite defense strategies. All right, so for this, we are going to go into Strat Sketch. Excuse me while I minimize that. Go with this. Okay, so Strat Sketch, we wanted to talk about defense in depth a little bit and show you an example of what I mean. So we're going to go in. This is the hard point we'll talk about Pierre's farm here. So here's the hard point. This is the area you want to defend. That's the main thing, the hard point. To defend this, you don't want to just be huddled in that hard point. You need to defend not only these four grid squares around Pierre's farm, because these are the four grid square control sectors for Pierre's farm. You need to control the terrain surrounding it as well. So your defense may extend as far as, depending on some situations, all the way out past the four sectors and encompassing the sectors around it, so the enemy cannot get a foothold to effectively launch attacks into your area. So, and sticking with Pierre's farm, and we'll use cattle sheds as our next example here. The enemy's control point here from the Esprit de Corps game. Now, to illustrate defense in depth here, we're going to go through and we'll start with how we wanted to set up, which was we had a defensive line, which was supposed to look like this for the most part. Totally blocking the enemy and busting across the wall. So this is the ideal defense. Yeah, we want all our resources being able to just hold the enemy here, but it's not always the way. C-Nut managed to amass so much force coming down this main road with armor units and everything else right up here by this X. And they were pushing down, had major cover, and they managed to get their infantry into this little compound and trench system here. Now, my defense was a squad that was supposed to be able to get up there. Instead of keep trying to beat my head against a damn wall the whole time and trying to force my way into here, we tried once and quite literally just stopped, set up, and I believe, was somewhere right. I'm not T-Rod was somewhere like right about, come on, there we go. Somewhere right about there. Guevara was kind of messing around up in this area a little bit, and their sight lanes were all focused here. Dash and Guevara had these entire sight lanes. I was kind of hiding back around this area on this X and putting fire in as much as I can from this way and shifting around to different positions where I needed to. We also had Dash from the west over here. He was an assault squad, but as circumstance required, he couldn't really push and started pushing from up into here and containing them from the left side in here. So basically what we did is we yielded this one grid square territory to be able to completely punish the enemy over and over and over again until their line faltered. They had to retreat back towards their main start. We pushed them here and took out their garrisons where they had their attacking garrisons over on Rue de la Guerre, and worked our way. Our offensive line worked their way all the way up and surrounded cattle sheds and worked our way in. We didn't end up holding cattle sheds, but we made our stand and we held Pierre's farm by doing what we had to do. And eventually what worked for us was literally defense in depth. We allowed the enemy into our territory. They wanted to come in, we let them in, and we held them right at this spot, right here at these buildings. And they couldn't do anything. Any questions on that? Any questions on the theory, the application, anything at all? Did I explain it well enough? Okay, I will take that as a no. So, all right, move on. Get rid of some of this real quick. We're gonna go over one more thing here, or two more things. We got sector control. So sector control, we touched on a little bit with like the defense in depth about how this is the 4 square area that we have to hold Pierre's, but you want to be able to hold this area. Now, I want to highlight this green area. No, this green area right in here with this circle. This is nothing but giant open field, and this takes up the majority of this whole sector. But over here on the right, we have this pretty cool little road coming up here. There's a great hedgerow and the stone wall where I said T-Raw was here before. This allowed, with barely even being in the sector, to control the entire left side and keep them bottled up in that little section on G5 here, G5, sorry, and in this little box. Sitting back, we had our armor unit kind of back here, holding them, shooting down the road, and then Dash's squad over on this side, pushing them. So they were contained in there, and my guys were not even in that grid square at all. We did not even have to be. We controlled this one sector grid square by using the advantages of terrain and holding the high ground over here on this green square on Hotel 5, this long rectangle. By holding the high ground and the sight lanes, we're still able to get enough firepower in on the target to control a sector that we are not even in. So it's not about being in the sector. You don't have to sit in the hard point to control the sector. You have to control the terrain surrounding. That's the only way. If the enemy's allowed to just march in and come through from any number of angles, then they're just gonna get in and wipe you out. If you sit in this hard point, they'll work their way in up all these little back hedgeways and come in behind you and just encircle the point, and you'll be done. So you've got to have a defense that's able to give them what they want in a way and let them in, but then punish them for it, if that makes sense. So we'll go through here, erase that real quick. Okay, so we got sector control. Let's get into we covered defense in depth, we covered sector control, and I wanted to cover a little bit of OP movement, which I have an example in the video, but Dash kind of did this a little bit in his video, which is really cool that he kind of explained this. On defense, it's a little different. You want to kind of use your OP as a early warning system in a way. So we may have like one garrison here. These are all going to be really quick, not anything up to what we may have actually had going on or anything like that. But your garrisons may look like this. They have to be 200 meters apart, and you may have another one like right back there. And they can kind of act as a radar system, but there's big gaps in between. A lot of the defense squads like to come in and they'll take their OPs and place them. And even some of the assault squads will, before they're able to push out of the sector, they'll fill in some of the flank gaps and get their OPs working out in between them as much as possible, creating a nice little detection net around everything. Defense is a little different now. Sometimes, like I've gone through during defense during the CNUT match, I had to move my OP and whatnot to help control another area. So as defense, you have the garrisons, but you can't solely rely on them. When this garrison right up in, Hotel 5 was threatened, I moved my OP over in here because there's great concealment back in this area to help give me a better spawn on that garrison to help out over there. And then once I was done up there, I helped move it back. Now, also with the defense, you want to make sure that when you're when you're not taking a lot of contact on defense and your offensive line is pushed up like we're pushing towards cattle sheds, so all our guys have managed to get in, and we basically surrounded cattle sheds and whatnot. All the offense squads have moved up. Me as a defense squad, I don't want to leave and just leave Pierre's farm to just be taken over and whatnot, but I still need to be up and help the defense. So to get into the cattle sheds thing and help with the offense here a little bit, we were able to move our OP up right here, still maintaining a kind of a rear defensive position. And we moved our squad coming in, my OP, up to about this point here, where my defense squad was able to spawn and be a part of the cap weight and provide suppressive fire and lock down an area right here and take out the enemy trying to run into the point. So we're kind of trying to cut off their reinforcements, and we were adding to the cap weight. But if anything at all happens at Pierre's farm, we can instantly fall back. Even when spawning in up at that position, all we have to do is take a few steps southeast and we're back in friendly territory and on the defense. So just keep that in mind when you're doing. You don't have to solely just sit on the defense point as a defensive squad. You can move around. You can take the fight to the enemy. You just have to keep an eye out on what's going on and never let your guard down from what's behind you. That's the most important thing when you're on that. So we're gonna go on from there. I don't think I had anything else to discuss in Strat Sketch. All right, back. All right, going through, we got the CNET video, and we're going to start up here real quick. I got it already keyed to start at a certain time. So here I wanted to show you. Trying to get rid. There we go. Right after I throw Skinnados, I think is where I open it. All right, cool. So yeah, I just wanted to show you. This is the garrison layout and spawn layout I was kind of talking about. We got our garrison in Hotel 5 up here in the corner. We got a garrison beyond the point, off to the west flank and southeast, etc., etc. Notice where I got my OP kind of in a nice little spot between two garrisons over here. You got Able Squad kind of putting their, Q Squad over here putting their garrison out there. We also have Nagat Squad putting their OP even a little further back in the territory behind, but that is also keeping a good tally on these back two garrisons, making sure nobody kind of sits around behind us. And you can see how we're kind of spread out here on the point. And you can see a good example of the defense in depth here also. We see I think that's P Squad trying to push where those helmet markers are in George 5 on that little trench system right by the Able move marker. I believe that's Dash's squad and P Squad, which I think was Sika. No, Sika was Mike. But we were trying to push into the G5 and we just couldn't take it. And the next map will show a little bit better what I was illustrating on the defense in depth. But this was literally the meat grinder right here. And we basically got to the point where we weren't going to go in there anymore. And you can see T-Raw already right here, set up on this little spot, punishing them as they come in from over here. And we have Muck Squad up here kind of holding our defensive right. And this is that giant open field I was talking about. So if we continue a little bit, let me go scrub through. All right. Yeah, and this you can kind of see right here. This is a zoomed in version of it. And there is no friendly presence right now in George 5. The enemy has pretty much just taken it over. We have a couple little guys in there, but they're literally just making them pay as they come in. And we got T-Raw on the right here, just funneling, like as they funnel in, he's just cutting them down left and right. So yeah, here you go. You got the enemy garrisons marked and all that stuff. And we have all our forces. And we had, I think, Muck now pushing down from the right over here. And we started collapsing on G5 at this point, closing in that kill box we created. So they came into our territory. We kind of had to let them in. There was nothing we can do. You know, when water beats at the wall so much, eventually it's going to break through until it's contained. So we let them spill in, contained them in that area, killed them a lot, broke their momentum, broke their spirits, and started pushing them out. So that is kind of a perfect example of defense in depth from a game we recently played. All right, moving on. I'll try to find a spot. I got it loaded here. Yeah, this is where we've started to secure the area. We've actually taken control of George 5, and we've started pushing out and working on wrapping around cattle sheds. We got Muck and them pushing towards George 4 in that compound. That'd be Rue de la Guerre, I believe. And then everybody's already working their way up into cattle sheds. Okay. Keep going a little more. All right, yep, still a little more. Yeah, here we go. We've started working our way up. I've inched my OP up a little bit in here. You can see it right to the right. I'm kind of circling with my cursor if you can see that. And all our forces have literally just wrapped around on 3 sides almost of the cattle sheds, working our way in. All right, here we go. This is the spot I wanted to show you. This is now what I was talking about with the OP placement in terms of now we have nothing to do on defense. If we're sitting back on Pierre's farm, we're literally not helping anything out now. But we want to get up in the fight, and we don't want to sacrifice our team actually being able to hold the point and do all this. So as you can see right here in the bottom corner of Fox 4, G4 right there, I got my OP for my squad literally set right on the border. So no matter what happens, if even the hint of something comes in behind at Pierre's farm, my guys are a couple steps away from being able to respond to that and get back to our defensive duty. And at the meantime, as I said, if you look at Fox 4 right here, that giant open field where the easy infantry marker was and whatnot, my squad was trying to hold that whole field and just cutting off enemy reinforcements from being able to work their way into the strong points. So, all right, moving on from there, I think that pretty much covers my defense in depth training. Thank you. I've been Double O Douche. If you have any questions, I guess now is the time.
Yeah, that's perfect summary.
Thank you. Hope you guys got something out of it.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
What's the first thing you should do, or like the most important thing you should do if you're a defensive squad and you take an enemy point? Like, what's the first thing or most important thing you should do when you take a point?
Get a garrison down immediately and start your guys on patrol. Get your, in the same breath, get your support dude to get to you and get supplies down. Or if the supplies have been dropped by commander, get your squad on you and focus on keeping you alive and securing the area around those supplies to get that garrison up. If you have a supply dude, get your supply dude on you and get your guys immediately patrolling that point, trying to push the remnants of the enemy out. You do not want them getting a foothold again, because a competent squad lead, if we lose a point, we're gonna just hide when we know we're losing the point, wait for it to go down, drop our new OP up. So you have got to get the pressure on them still. You can't just cap the point and think it's over from there. You got to get in and get real dirty now, because this is the time, because we don't have control of the point. You don't have sector control. You do not have area control whatsoever. So you got to achieve that, and that's the defensive job. So your main goal when that happens is garrison and get control of that point. Anybody else? Oh, all right. Well, I guess that concludes the defensive squad lead training, guys. Yeah, seriously, if there are any questions, just please let me know. Anything else I could have done different for the training? Other than that, I hope you guys got something out of it.
Thank you, Doe.
Yeah,
Thank you,
no
Doe.
problem.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Very informative.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Have a good night, guys. And I guess let's go kill some shit.
Have a good night.
Peace.